Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. In tonight's episode, we're going to continue reading on the Sobriety E-Book. If you have been following along, we have covered 6 episodes of this e-book. I printed this e-book off from drugrehab.com. It was 100 pages long, and it's called The Sobriety E-Book, Your Guide to a Better Life by Chris Elkins. And what I've been doing is basically going through and breaking it down and reading it. We've had some workbook questions and some other questions. So feel free to have paper and pen if you want, or you can go back and stop and listen and write down. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just basically you being honest with yourself, because going through sobriety is something that is very challenging, and people do it in different ways, and they handle things differently, they learn things differently. And I say learn because I think with sobriety, or with anything for that matter in life, of changing something that has been your way of life, you have to relearn a part of life without it. And I think that being honest with yourself obviously is the first and foremost thing that you need to do in order to accomplish the real goal, and that is to heal. When you self-medicate, is what I like to look at it as, which is basically taking anything to try to comfort you, whether it be comfort food, whether it be cigarette smoking, whether it be drugs, alcohol, a shopaholic, a gambler, the list goes on. Addiction is way more than just drugs and alcohol. And I think a lot of people have a misconception of that. And when people say, oh, they got an addiction, they automatically want to assume that it's drugs or alcohol. And most of the time, I believe that they automatically think drugs when they say somebody has an addiction. Because when somebody has a drinking problem, they call them an alcoholic. They don't call them an addict, they call them an alcoholic. So when somebody says, they're addicted or they're an addict, they automatically go to drugs, from my experience. But you can be an addict and have an addiction to so many different things. And you can have an addiction to more than just one thing. Because sometimes when you are self-medicating, you don't get the relief or the satisfaction or the comfort per se, so you keep going to try to find that, and before you know it, you've got a lot of different challenges and addictions in your life that just seem to take over who you are, and then eventually you don't know any other way of life or any other thing about you except of what you're doing. And when it gets to that point, I believe that living life is just letting life live you at that point. And I've talked about it before in my other podcast. It's a merry-go-round, and trying to find the safe place to get off is key factor. Because if you're self-medicating or you're dealing with things, coming to terms with realizing that you have to take the leap of faith, because most of the time the merry-go-round per se is still going. It doesn't stop to let you off. So you have to decide on what part of that circle that you're going in is a safe spot for you to take that leap of faith. And a lot of times that's what makes it difficult, because sometimes you don't even realize that that's what's happening with you, because you're so used to the comfort, I guess, without it being comfort. You've been so accustomed to that way of life that that's just what you do. And you think that that's what you deserve. That having a regular, normal life sounds strange, because to you, this is your way of normal life. And knowing something different to you is foreign, because you're not accustomed to that way. So having to teach yourself and relearn how to live life in a way that's more healthier is a part of healing, and it's a part of challenge. But it's a big part of believing in yourself, growing, and being honest with yourself. And healing healing the part of you that needed whatever emptiness needed to be filled. And it's every people don't heal and accomplish their goal of sobriety per se the same as everybody else. So what might work for one person might not work for another on getting sober or healing or learning a different way about themselves, because everybody is different. So people think, oh, there's relapse and I failed and I'm a failure. I've started using again, so I might as well just, go ahead and do it. I can't do it. It's too hard. Well, maybe the way that you did it was not the way that worked for you. That doesn't mean you're a failure. That just means that you have to try a different way. And it's just kind of like going to school and being educated. Teachers conduct class and stuff. And everybody in there has a different learning ability and a different way that they learn. And so if the teacher just teaches one way across the board, then somebody who learns a different way is not going to get the benefit out of that class as somebody who learns the way that teacher teaches it. So finding what your learning pattern and way of learning is a big, huge step on learning what is going to work for you and what is not. But you have to be honest with yourself, and that is one of the hardest things, because I believe admitting something is acknowledging it. And it's easier to keep pushing it away and keep pushing it away and keep pushing it away and saying this, that, and the other. And it's another thing to own it and do something you never thought you would do before. Believe in yourself. And realize that drug does not love you. And the whole of the emptiness that you're trying to fill is your own self-worth. Believing that you are worth being you. And that is huge. Huge. So in this episode, we're going to go over episode 7. Like I said, this is the Sobriety E-Book, Your Guide to a Better Life, from drugrehab.com. Feel free to go on there and check it out. Download it, copy it, whatever you want to do. They have a lot of information on there. And this is by Chris Elkins. And I'm going to recap what the other episodes were about, and tell you what we got looking forward to. We are actually almost done with this. We are on page 72. So we are actually almost done, because some of this is also resources. And we are going to go over that page 2. And I think that's in the 90s. So we started off in part 1. We had a welcome letter from Dr. Huckleby. What was his name? No, I don't know. I don't have the paper from me. It was Dr. Huckleby. And basically he was going over his experiences and his words of encouragement and his thoughts and stuff on this ebook, but also sobriety. And then we talked about how to use this ebook, quick tips for sobriety, understanding addiction, recovery, and relapse. In part 2, we had workbook and questions, making the choice, setting goals, creating a support system, finding a safe environment, and evaluating your environment. In part 3, we had workbook questions. We also had setting boundaries, communicating boundaries, think about our relationships, create our own boundaries, and establish consequences. In part 4, we had more workbook and questions. And we talked about triggers and cravings, craving questionnaire, and avoiding triggers. And in 5, we had coping skills and coping behavior questionnaire. And then in part 6, we actually had decide how you'll cope and keep track of how to cope. And this one here, we are going to be talking about stress management. So in this episode, we're talking about stress management. And then in the next one, we'll be talking about time management, handling relapse. Well, if we got time, we're going to go over time management. So we'll see about that one. And then we have handling relapse, making an emergency relapse prevention plan, and then resources for sobriety, organizations in your community, support groups, and different numbers to call. And then we'll reflect on what you've accomplished and go over any lingering things that this ebook has. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. So it says, how will you relieve stress? And this is questions. There's questions in this as well. So, and I'll read them slowly, but like I said, this is also recorded, so you can always go back and rewind if you need to. And there are no right or wrong answers, like I said, and you can go back and change them as you grow and as you heal. So you can always go back and revisit your questions and reevaluate where you're at, your accomplishments, and where you need to make adjustments, if you need to make adjustments. So think about the things that cause stress in your life. Common stressors include relationships with family, friends, co-workers, and employers, traffic, weather, or current events, traumatic experiences such as a death of a loved one, a car accident, or ending of a relationship. And these are just some examples. Most people experience Most people experience elevated stress during times of transition, such as when they move, start a new job, maybe return to school, maybe start a new school. Think of realistic, healthy ways you can relieve stress. Keep in mind, though, when I talk about addiction, it's just not towards adults, and it's not just towards children or kids or teenagers. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And self-medication, people say, oh, I would never do that, I would never do that. Never say never, because you really don't know. And you're around people that maybe you're trying to help with addiction, or maybe you just want to help people in general. So educating yourself, but also realizing that judgment, miscommunication, misunderstanding, and already making up your mind on a certain opinion, if you will, is not going to do you or the person that's trying to heal any good. And I say you because, for one, you might end up in that spot one day. But also, too, more so, you might just be that one that makes the difference in their life. Because when you are trying to heal from something, there's nothing more darker than feeling that you don't exist, even though you're in a world that you rotate in. And your self-worth is not even a question, because you don't even feel worthy of yourself. So it's a whole different train of thought and way of motion of your being. And it takes one moment, one person, one episode, one something that can change it all around. So instead of being judgmental, try to be understanding and empathetic. And I say empathetic, not sympathetic, unless you have gone through it. If you've gone through it, then obviously sympathy is there. But unless you've gone through it, at least try to understand on the level that you can understand the emotion, even if you cannot understand the action. But like I said, addiction is not just drug and alcohol related. So it's not necessarily the substance, but it's the act of the self-medication that needs to be healed. And once you find a way to have a different way of point of view of life, and perspective on filling that gap or that hollowness, and try to revert your pain and your heartache and the negative reinforcements and negative addictions and revert them to something positive, is a huge lifesaver. At least that's what I have found with people that I know and myself. It says most people experience elevated stress during times of transition. Oh, I read this part. Sorry. I'll read it again. Such as when they move, start a new job, return to school, maybe go to a new school. Think of realistic, healthy ways that you can relieve stress. Question 1. How will you relieve stress from friends? So if your friends are stressing you out, I probably do that to a lot of my friends. How do you relieve stress from your friends? Number 2, how will you relieve stress from your family? Now that's a big one. That's a big one. Especially now at the holiday season. But if you're like me and my family, it's pretty much every day of the year. Number 3, how will you relieve work-related stress? So, you're work-related and you're, stressed, and employees or coworkers or your employers or maybe vendors or customers or whomever. And it can be overwhelming. And then maybe you're already having an off day anyway because of whatever else you're dealing with. So that just adds on to your stress. Number 4, what will you do to prepare for periods of high stress, such as holidays or travel? Number 5, how will you handle an unexpected traumatic event if one occurs? Now this question's not fair, because I'm going to tell you, when you have a traumatic event or a tragedy, if I can get that word out, tragedy in your life, I'm going to say this, and that's a stupid question, because when you have an unexpected traumatic moment or tragedy in your life, you have no clue how you're going to handle it. You might think you know. And to be honest, that might be the very reason why you are self-medicating. Or picked up a new addiction, per se, if you want to say it that way. Because unless you, there's no unless. In my opinion, there's no way to prepare or handle or know ahead of time how you're going to handle an unexpected traumatic or tragedy event. So that question to me is stupid. Maybe you can reword it and be like, how have you handled an unexpected traumatic event or tragedy in your life? How have you handled it? What did it do? What happened? And what became of it for you? Number 6, who can you turn to when you feel overwhelmed with stress? And sometimes that can be difficult, because finding somebody that you can not only confide in is one thing, but finding somebody who you can entrust with your dark emptiness and hollowness of you, your vulnerability of your internal core, if you will. Somebody that you entrust with that is a big thing. So my opinion, if somebody comes to you and opens up to you about anything, especially something that is very near and dear to their well-being and their mentality, mocking them, degrading them, ignoring them, belittling them, passing judgment on them, anything that is negative reinforcement on the situation, in my opinion, is very, very traumatic in itself to the person that is coming to somebody to entrust their well-being with. Because it takes a lot of courage to take that step. It takes a lot of acknowledgement to do that step. It takes a lot of soul searching and admittance, and it takes a lot from a person to admit that that's where they're at in their life, and where they're at in their feelings and their emotions, and that's a huge thing. And so for them to not only have to be honest with themselves and come to terms with stuff and admit to themselves where they're at, but taking that and entrusting it to someone and their vulnerability sometimes is a life and death moment. And I know that doesn't seem fair to the person on the receiving end, because maybe you might be like, well, I didn't ask for them to come to me. But the fact of the matter is that they have actually thought about it enough to come to you, to entrust you in this moment of their life, of a life or death situation of their vulnerability. And now say that you help them, and you're not, push them away or judge them, whatever. And you actually sincerely, help them out and try to get resources and whatever the case may be. And maybe something happens. Maybe they have a relapse. Maybe they, nowadays, well, I say nowadays, but it's actually been around forever and a day since they've been inventing different things. But there's the high rate of overdose is through the roof. And so let's hypothetically say that they've relapsed, or they've got something that was laced, and they died, or they end up in the hospital, or they commit suicide, or something happened. Then where does that leave the person that was trying to help? That's a traumatic event for you. That's tragedy. You don't know how you're going to handle that, because you're going in with the intentions of helping somebody. You're going in with the good intentions of your heart and trying to do a life or death situation for this person that you care about. And you're not doing anything wrong. And if something happens, now that is something that you carry. And to know ahead of time how you're going to cope with something like that is not fair to put on your shoulders. And it's not fair for you to blame yourself, because you did nothing wrong. And that's where the catch is at all the way around. Because there are people that suffer that tragic event of one more time, I can't help you, okay, this time. And then sometimes they're like, I just can't do it no more. And then they don't. And just hypothetically say something happens. And then they spend their time blaming themselves. Or they think, well, if I don't help them and something happens, I'm going to have to live with that. Or I just can't do this anymore. And then you are flipped around, and then you end up being in a deeper situation too than what you normally were in, because you're trying to figure out how to cope. And you might end up finding yourself sitting next to this person, and now you're both there. Or it might be opposite, and they're with you, and you both are healing together. Because that is a traumatic trigger and tragedy on both ends. Because let's say the person you're helping or care about, you're trying to get a hold of them, and they don't answer their phone, or they don't call, they don't come by, they don't touch base with you. And you're trying diligently to try to get a hold of them, and nothing. Well, then you're like, oh my gosh, did something happen to them? Did they overdose? Did they get hurt? Are they strung out? Are they safe? Are they homeless? Are they in jail? Are they in a hospital? All these questions start coming to your head. And then your anxiety is through the roof. And then you're triggered because you have been trying to help this person. So now you're triggered. And it's devastating. So while I read this sobriety ebook and go over it, I by no means am I trying to belittle or downplay either side of an addiction at all. Because it is a life or death situation all the way around. There are no right or wrong answers, because nobody even really knows the questions on what to even do. You just got to try. And that's the biggest and most hardest step, is putting that first foot forward. It says stress relief techniques are more effective when you've tried them before. Create goals for practicing the techniques you listed above. Be sure to refer to the SMART guidelines for making effective goals. We read about the SMART guidelines previously. For example, when your spouse is stressing you out, oh no, that don't ever happen, does it? You can get a goal to ask for privacy, or set a goal to ask for privacy, and go to your room to practice deep breathing and muscle relaxation techniques. You may set a goal to take a 30-minute walk every day after work or practice yoga in the morning before work. List some stress goals below. So it has like, my goals for relieving stress are the following. So it just has different lines for you to fill in different goals. Now, one thing you might consider is having a code word between you and your significant other or whomever. So when it gets to an escalated part for you and you're having an anxiety attack, or you're going into a panic attack, or you're going into a mode, or whatever the case may be, have some way of communication that is understood and respected. Because if you are with somebody and you love them and you care about them, you should be able to not have to force yourself to be considerate and understanding of their well-being and what they're going through, and their state of life. Because if something happens to them, that's the person you're supposed to love. So if they're saying, hey, I need a time out, I need to regroup, I need a time out of respect of your love for them, and out of respect for them, then that should be accommodatable, be able to accommodate without forcing yourself. It shouldn't be forcing yourself. It should be pretty much automatic. Or if you're in a dispute, and I know this is easier said than done because people do get caught up in the moment. That is all the more reason why to try to have constructive arguments if need be. There's no need to throw something out from 1962 or 1912 or something your great grandpappy did years ago that has affected you somehow, some way in your relationship. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's just arguing to have something to argue over. That's just trying to be non-productive. And, there was a quote one time, I think Dr. Phil said it, I could be wrong, but he was saying something like, do you want to solve the problem or do you want to be right? And sometimes people just want to argue just because they want to be right, or they want to argue. Some people like the drama. But at the same time, some people who, a dispute, if you will, between people, whether it be a sibling, a parent, a loved one, a child, whatever the case may be, when you, and I'm going to say this respectfully, if you are right about something and they are wrong, and they're not the type of person to own that they made a mistake, then it's going to get really, really devious and manipulating on the other end. Because when somebody doesn't want to admit or acknowledge that they've made a mistake, or they're wrong, or they're out of line, or whatever the case may be, or the big word, they're not right, um, they're going to do everything but own that. And when they turn it around to make you have to defend yourself, it takes it off of them. And they don't have to own anything. And so then, therefore, in their mind, I would like to speculate, they win. So, out of respect for the person that you care about and love, maybe have a conversation when you are at a situation that it's calm and communicatable, of how to react to certain things. Because sometimes miscommunication is all that turns everything upside down. Misunderstandings and miscommunication can be the guillotine of a relationship, and it shouldn't have to be. So trying to find different ways to stress with work, at home, out and about, whatever the case may be that stresses you out, trying to find ways on how you think maybe you can evaluate the situation, and how you can cope with it, and how you can deal with it, and how you can manage through it. So like with me, when my anxiety is elevated, I've talked about before, I used to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, but I found after a while that didn't work for me. So now I say my ABCs, and I say them in my head, I say them out loud. Sometimes I say them and I do sign language at the same time. It depends on how traumatic my anxiety is and how overwhelming it takes me. And there have been times I have cried so hard I was making myself sick because I was so upset. And it has worked for me. It takes a while sometimes, but it gets me there, and it calms me down, and it has actually been a game changer for me. So trying to find something that copes for you might actually be what helps you at that moment. So like one time we were having a really bad storm, and we were having a tornado watch, and my anxiety was through the roof. And I used to not have a problem with storms, but now that I take care of my mom, and I'm kind of like on my own, it really gets me differently, because my mom is blind and bedridden, and so there's a lot of responsibility on top of everything else. But also too, she does not want to take shelter. And so I'm stressing, and my anxiety's through the roof, and I'm having a nervous breakdown, and at the same time the sirens are going off, and I'm trying to, and then she wants to argue with me. So then it's a big, huge, blown out argument, and I'm still freaking the hell out. And by then my anxiety is through the roof, that I'm just like, this tornado can just pretty much take me, because that's pretty much what's going on with me right now. And so I have actually literally, at one point in time, one day we had a tornado watch, and I was actually outside in my camper, and I was trying to figure out what to do, because I was very, very triggered. And my mom was inside, but my daughter was inside with her. So I knew my mom was not by herself. So, and it was coming down really bad. It was hailing and stuff. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I started doing my ABCs, and I would rock back and forth, and I did my ABCs, and I'd kind of sway back and forth on my feet and alternate them and stuff. And eventually I calmed myself down. And, so that's just something that I like, share with you, that maybe it might help with you. So just an example of something that, to think about. So it says, stress management checklist. Refer to your goals for relieving stress. Every few days, think back on how many times you felt overwhelmed with stress. Each time you practice one of your techniques to relieve stress, add a check mark next to the goal you accomplished. So once you set your goals, if you accomplish that and it worked for you, then check it off so you know that that worked. So that way and sometimes you have to have, and I always say, you have to have backup plans to your coping techniques. Because sometimes when you're in that frame of mind and you're not thinking as straight and clear headed, what technique worked one time might not work the next. Because it depends on what state of mind you're in and where your feelings are at that time. And your surroundings and who you're with and the triggers and all kinds of different things and scenarios. So when you are calm and you've more or less kind of got yourself together where you're thinking more clearly of you and being you, that is the time I believe would be good to start thinking of different techniques. So because when you are upset or you are triggered or whatever's going on, you're not going to think as rational. And I know some people are like, oh, hey, when you get to the point where you're like that or whatever, give me a call. I'm here for you. And yes, that is sincerely true. However, I know from experience that when you are in that state of mind, you're not entrusting somebody so easily with that type of vulnerability that you got going on at that moment. And suicide is huge. So trying to find a game plan prior to could be the very thing that saves your life. Literally. It says, think about how each stress relief technique made you feel. Did it help? Was it realistic? Did you try it? Answer each question below. Number 1, was each technique realistic? Number 2, how effective was each technique? So how effective were they? And did you have to make changes along the way? Because maybe you thought, well, I'll just do it this way, but then come to find out you needed to do it a different way, or handle something a different way. So like say maybe I do my ABCs, but maybe that wasn't working for me. So maybe I started singing nursery rhymes. Or maybe I started singing and making up my own song, or whatever. Or go for a walk around the block, or, whatever it is. So having additional game plans, but maybe you need to adjust some of the things. Number 3, what was your favorite technique? Which one out of them was your favorite? And why was it your favorite? Number 4, which techniques did you avoid and why? So maybe you made some techniques up, but when the time came, you avoided doing them. What were they and why did you feel like you needed to do that? Did it make you uncomfortable? Were there other factors involved? And being honest with yourself, because the only person that's going to see these answers is you, unless you show them to somebody. And there are no right or wrong answers, and you can go back and change them as you evolve and you grow, and as you learn along the way. It says, revise your goals with the techniques you are most likely to use, and if necessary, add new techniques to your goals. Repeat this process every 3 to 5 days until you've developed several reliable stress relief techniques. You can lengthen the time between evaluations as you develop successful techniques. So again, you can go through and reevaluate whatever works for you. It depends on how often you're triggered and you're going through your anxiety and panic attacks. So we are going to have time to go through time management. So we're going to do this section now. Let's see if they have any questions on this part. There's not as many, no. But on the back or at the end of it, it's just like a time management thing. But other than that, we're reading. So we are on page 76. We're actually making really good time. Usually I ramble on these things and I do my own opinion thing, but there's just been so much going on. I've been sick for about a week and a half. I'm gradually getting over that, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of mellow, but I don't know, I just felt the need to continue on with these podcasts in this particular subject. But when we get done with this ebook, obviously I've been working on other subjects as well, so obviously stay tuned for them. And if you haven't checked out my other forecast, yeah, my other forecast, it's a chance of what in the hell is going through your head, D? Uh, my other podcast, please feel free to do so. Anyway, time management. Most of the time, stress can be avoided or relieved by managing your time effectively. There is only so much time in a day, and we have a limited amount of energy to spend on tasks. Managing your time can make you feel productive, more energetic, and less stressed. Different people have different techniques and tools that work for them. A friend may be able to utilize a detailed calendar and strict daily schedule, but you may be more comfortable with simple to-do list. Find out what works for you. Again, what works for one person might not work for another. Some people like to have an itinerary. Some people just want a to-do list, check off, a goal or have a list. And if they're like me, I make a list and I forget where I put the list. And then I look at the list, I'm like, do I really want to do that on my list? I can wait on that, right? So it's kind of like when you go to the store. I made a list, but it's out in my car, or I left it on the table, or I forget where I put it, or whatever the case may be. So if you're like me, you're winging it. And sometimes here lately, I've been putting the list on my cell phone. So when it's that bad, or I'll text it to myself, or have my daughter text it to me. So when they need something, I'll be like, just text it to me. Or when she goes somewhere, she's like, just text me what you want. So, let's see. Create priorities. Managing time starts with determining what's important. What are the most important things for you to accomplish today? What do you need to accomplish this week? Create a list of priorities and strive to accomplish the most important items before attending to unimportant or trivial tasks. Now, I'm going to say this. Sometimes the most important and hardest thing for somebody to do is get out of bed. Is to open their eyes, wake up, get out of bed, and actually be a part of life. Depression is, I always say it's really just undescribable. There is no really certain word to describe depression. And depression is at different levels, obviously, because people handle things differently. But you hear people say, I'm just so depressed, and people are like, oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, but, and I speak from experience, I'm a huge self-harm survivor. And I am a surviving suicidal victim, is what I call it. And depression, I don't even know how to put that word into words. It's an underrated and under-respected emotion. Because it is the death of somebody. Whether they are physically dead or physically still breathing. Sometimes to them, they feel no different. And it's no joke. And I always say, if you're going through anything at all, obviously try to have a coping mechanism to try to help you cope and work through that moment that you're going through the best that you can. Seek help, medication, therapy, a doctor, somebody that you trust. Obviously, God first and foremost is a big healing factor, but also very important and vital, I believe. It's for me. But at the same time, people that suffer depression, it's a, when I was going through the hardest part of my depression, one of the hardest times of my depression, um, I actually had people, be like, I don't know, I try to get a hold of them, or I've invited them out to go somewhere, and they're not responding, and they're not opening the door, they're not answering my call, they're not answering my text messages, um, and the list goes on and on and on. And they're just like, well, I tried. And when you are going through something like that, reaching out to somebody might as well be rocket science, to a newborn baby, because it is not doable. From my experience, let me rephrase that. It is not doable. Because there's a lot of mixed emotions in there. There's a lot of emotions people don't understand. There's a lot of everything. And like I said, there's no true definition to it. There really isn't. And everybody handles it differently. And sometimes when somebody goes to people and they do entrust their feelings and themselves with somebody, to be made a mockery of, to be talked about, to be belittled, to be left feeling that the world was better off without them because nobody cares. You're crying for help, literally crying for help, and you might as well just be done because nobody cares, and that's where you're at. And people are gonna mourn your loss when you're gone, but give a shit less while you're here. And they're gonna be like, I don't know what happened. Well, they've been suffering depression for a while now. I wish they would have got help. I've tried to go over there and talk to them, and they just, whatever the case may be. And I'm not trying to put blame. There's no blame on anybody. But don't be so quick to put somebody down, whether directly or indirectly, and make a mockery on an emotion that you should thank your ass that you cannot understand and relate to because you've never been there. You should be thankful that you don't understand that level, that emotion, that moment that person is going through. Count your blessings. But that doesn't give you the right to be an insensitive asshole. And I say that from experience because I've had that happen to me. And I've also been on the other end as well. And I don't take that lightly. I had a best friend that committed suicide. And I had another really good friend that tried to, and his brother found him in time. But a couple years ago, I was sitting in that spot. And I was to the point where I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. And nobody cared. I was crying to the world. I was crying to my family. I was crying inside, outside, every which way. My walls were so soaked with tears. I was drowning, and nobody even cared to notice. Nobody. And I've talked about this on my other podcast. Because it was that deep to me. I sat up in my bed, bawled my eyes out, sent a text message, voice recorded, I believe. It's vague. Very vague. I was crying hysterically. I don't even remember what I said. And I sent it to myself, I believe. I don't even remember. It's kind of a blur. And I put a handgun to my head. I had a revolver. Put it to my head. And through the grace of God, of intervention of some way. And like I said, it's a blur. I think my mom called me and said she needed me for something. I think, but I don't remember. That moment was changed around for me. I didn't want to die. I just didn't see any point in living anymore because I hurt undescribably that I didn't even know what to do with that emotion anymore. And I wanted it to leave. I wanted that emotion out of me, and I didn't want it anymore. And that's where I was. And I can say today, I am very proud of myself. I started doing these podcasts, and it has been awesome therapy for me, for one. But also, two, if I can just help one person in this world, even if it's just me, then this podcast does exactly what I wanted it to do. It's an outlet, but it's also an outlet of reality. I am very raw and honest and straightforward in my podcast, and I don't sugarcoat it. I have broke down crying. I have been very straightforward because there are people in this world that I believe with my heart have been way deeper in that abyss than I've ever been. Because some people succeeded, and now some people are the product of what's left over from their attempt. Because the difference with me is, even though I had that to my head, and I had my finger on that trigger, and I had that cocked back, I didn't pull it. Matter of fact, I went outside later on and shot it to the ground. And then I don't remember what else happened after that. It's a blur. And that's okay with me, because I don't need to remember the details to remember the emotion. But I don't have to remember the emotion. I just have to learn to respect. I have to respect my life. I have to respect the outcome. I have to respect my purpose. I have to respect me. It's not a matter about being selfish. It's a matter of taking your next breath. Literally. And I know that doesn't have to do with sobriety, but it does. Because in all honesty, it takes you back to that question: what would you do in a traumatic event? I don't think I would sit down there on the form and put, I would sit in my bed, cry so hard, leave a message to somebody, and put a gun to my head. No. I hope not. But I don't know why that question's even in there. So we're going to move on. So, time management. It says write them down. Writing your priorities frees your mind of having to remember what needs to be accomplished. Making lists lets you focus on tasks at hand without worrying about forgetting something. Tools such as calendars and planners can help you keep track of things. So sometimes, I was telling a friend of mine this actually. I was calming her down one day because she was very, very overwhelmed and stuff. And I told her, I said, make a list of what you need done, what you need accomplished, what is weighing on you. And then you take that list and you itemize it and dissect it to what is now and important to what is you can make a second list to put the other. So say like, and this might sound silly to some people, but to her this was very upsetting to her. She was crying, she was upset, and I was trying to calm her down. So even though it's not a big deal, or it wasn't a big deal in affecting me per se, because I couldn't relate to that moment with her, it was real to her. So me being her friend and caring about her, then it makes it real to me, because that's where I need to respect who she is and understand that even though I'm not where she's at in her feelings and emotions and mentality, I need to respect her emotion that she is. So I was like, well, make a second list and, my priorities. So like, she needed to go like to the store and get food. She needed to go to the laundromat. She needed to get her tire fixed and whatever the case. She was naming different things. And then she's like, I need to get a refrigerator. And I said, hold on a minute. Is your refrigerator going out? She's like, no, but it will be someday. It's going to go out. It's old. Okay, but it's not right now. So that can go on your second list. That's not a priority. That's a later on. So this list that you're going to make, the second one, is not a priority list. It's a non-overwhelming list. So you got the list that you need, and then you got the list that of your wants. You got needs and wants. You might want a new refrigerator because it's old and it will go out someday, but you don't need one right now, so you've got time. It's on your list to do, but you got other things that are more prioritized. You need to go to the grocery store. Okay. You need to get your tire fixed. Okay. You need to get your laundry done. Okay. Those are very important things. That needs to go on your first list. Prioritize it. Help take the stress off of you of being overwhelmed. A big to-do list. I'm very, very bad at that. I gotta go do this. I gotta do this. I need to get this done. Oh my gosh, this has got to be done. Oh my God. And I'm just like, calm down. Calm down. Take a moment. Reevaluate. You're one person. You're one person. You cannot get it all done right now. Let's think, where we got to do with it. Where are we going to go with this? How are we going to manage this? And then usually I have to de-escalate myself and calm myself down, because my mind and my overthinking and my anxiety and my OCD, my everything has kicked in, and I'm already ready to go to bed because I'm finished with the day. I can't handle it. My depression is kicking in. My anxiety's kicking in. I'm having a panic attack. What the hell am I going to do? First step, calm myself down. Talk myself through it. You know yourself better than anybody. And all the times that you've put yourself down, all the times you have belittled yourself, all the times that you have self-harmed yourself, all the times you have done anything that has hurt you in any way, shape, or form, that has not been complimentary to your well-being and your mentality and your life. Redirect that to something good. There is always something good out of every tragedy, out of every bad moment. And I know that sounds stupid to people, but I know firsthand that that's a fact. I know it for a fact. And I've talked about this in my other podcast. It hurts. But the first step is forgiving yourself. And in order to forgive yourself, you have to take that step to believe that you're even worth even doing so. Because society has got you believing so many negative things about you. You've got yourself believing so many negative things about you. And you've reinforced it. And if you haven't, somebody else has. So before you know it, this is your identity. And I talked about that in Give Me Back My Mirror. Self-reflection. But also, too, self-acknowledgement, self-appreciation, self-coping, self-love, self-life. I always say sometimes, living can suck the life right out of you. And you let life live you and you forget to live life. And I'm right there with it. But I am trying my darndest, and I am doing my darndest to revert that for myself. And I can honestly say that for the first time in my life, I'm at a point in my life, I don't want to die. I'm not carrying that emotion on my heart. And I am healing and dissecting myself, hypothetically, of my emotions, my personality, my redirection, trauma. I'm dissecting it all, categorizing it to the best I can, respectfully, obviously, because I'm trying to heal the part of me that was trying to survive, that didn't know what else to do with that emotion, and carrying it was too much, that they were ready to die. And that part of me is getting stronger every day. And I am so proud of me for that. Because it sounds crazy, I'm sure, to some. But to me, it's my life. It's my life. It says, make a schedule. Now that you have a list of written priorities, schedule your time each day. Leave gaps in your day in case a task takes longer to accomplish than anticipated. Make time to accomplish high priority items and schedule free time and breaks throughout the day. I always... Now, this might be realistic to some people, okay? But with me, my life is so... so versatile. And there's no way to plan exactly how my day and time management is. Honestly, on what I can do and what I can't do. Because sometimes I'll set a schedule, like on the calendar I put that I was going to go have plans and go do something. I changed that like 3 or 4 times on my calendar, and then eventually I just erased it. Because it didn't happen. Because things were coming up. So, realistically, be realistic. But if you have, like, time in between something, maybe you're on your lunch break, or maybe you're, obviously pay attention to the road, but your drive time, or when you get home, if you take a hot bath or something, or shower, use that and use that as a moment to be able to take advantage and utilize that time differently, and more efficiently and effectively for you. And it might actually, it might actually help you a little bit. But don't get mad at yourself and stress yourself out if making a schedule does not work for you. Because these are all suggestions. But again, don't stress yourself out by trying to not stress yourself out. Because that kind of beats the purpose. And it's just not... There's no shame and guilt in not being able to do all this verbatim, and the way it is. This is just suggestions. And obviously everybody does things differently. So you might take things and revise it, if you will, to what works for you. So avoid distractions. That one would not work for me at all. Let's just put it that. Avoid distractions would not work for me. Get rid of things that waste time. If possible, keep your cell phone on silent while you're working. Unsubscribe from unnecessary mailing lists. Ask coworkers not to bother you when you're working. Turn off the TV, radio, or other distractions. Removing distractions from your environment helps prevent you from procrastinating and avoiding work. Now, my youngest daughter and I, we have the same learning technique. So I couldn't get mad at her when she was in school, because I did the same thing. But when I would study, I had to have my headphone music in my ears. I had to be jamming on my music while I was studying, and while I was typing, while I was writing, while I was reading my book report. And I know that might sound silly to some people, but I did. And my daughter is the same way. Knowing how your study techniques are. And I say this, but this was when I was in college, because I had to learn my learning techniques. And it just worked for me. And then when I got 3 degrees, and then my last bout of college, I did this still, and I got a 4.0, because and I'm not trying to say, hey, but I'm just saying that was my learning. That was how I learned. That was my way of learning, and my ability of what I did. And my daughter is the same way. So when I would walk in there when she was in high school, and I'm like, what are you doing? And her music just blaring with her headphones, and she's doing my homework. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but everybody learns differently. Now I do notice that, I built a shed, this past month, and I noticed when I would get frustrated with it, I would take what I called a union break, and try to revamp myself. But I put my headphones on, my Bluetooth headphones on, and I was listening to my music, and I got distracted from building my shed because I was too busy either putting on a concert by myself, or putting on a dance party, I guess, or both of the same. And I was completely by myself out there, and I was singing to my music and dancing. I turned around, my daughter's standing there looking at me, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm putting on a concert. Mind your business. Don't judge me. And she just rolled her eyes. So, like I said, avoiding distractions it did take me longer to put it together when I had my headphones on for my shed. Anyway, focus on one thing at a time. A lot of people think they're more efficient when they multitask. Working on 2 things at once creates the illusion that you're saving time. But when you do things at once, you aren't paying attention enough to the task to complete them effectively or efficiently. In the end, multitasking ends up wasting time. I agree and disagree with that, because I can multitask some things. Some things I get scatterbrained. But when I'm having a good moment, or a good day or good episode, or whatever the case may be of myself, I multitask. I say that I'm a multi-thinker, and people look at me like, what? My counselor was like, what do you mean by that? I can multitask in my head. I can sing, read things, and do something else, and this, that, and the other, all at the same time. And understand exactly what I'm doing. But then there'll be time where I walk in the other room to go get something, and I forget what I was doing. I literally sat outside the other day on my step, because I came out to my camper for something, and for the life of me, I couldn't remember what. And I sat on my step, and I'm like, why did I come out here? And so I started talking about, okay, I did this, this. And I'm like, I could ask my daughter, well, she ain't going to know. I wouldn't have told her. I was like, oh, I remember now. It triggered me to remember. And, but I settled on my step, and it's like, for the life of me, I could not remember what it was. So it depends on if I'm having a good moment or if episodes like that happen. So, and I like to speculate that I'm not the only person that happens to, but I'm not calling nobody out. So stay busy. When you manage your time effectively, you'll stay busy without feeling overwhelmed. You'll have time to do things you enjoy, but you'll avoid having too much free time. Too much free time can lead to isolation and thinking about unhealthy ways to kill time. Again, if you can occupy yourself and utilize yourself in positive, effective ways and put yourself in positive directions and revert yourself, if you are doing something fun or constructive that way, then you have less time and opportunity, if you will, to self-medicate or have a negative reaction on yourself of something. So if let's say you decide that you want to do a podcast, that's very good therapy for you. It's very good to it's a place to put your feelings, for one. But doing something that you're passionate about, but also to helping people. But there's research to go into it, and there's time that you have to, evaluate it and then do it. And depending, there's one thing to do podcasts and have it, people do it differently, and they have different reasons for it. And there's no right or wrong in it. But let's just say you're trying to come through an addiction. So you pick up, well, hypothetically say doing a podcast, and you're going to actually find purpose for something for you, something that's yours, something that you can believe in, something that means something to you, something that you came up with, something you have control with. You can set your own time and hours for when you want to do it and how you want to do it. You can talk about whatever you want to. Pretty much it's just open field. And but that's a sense of belonging somewhere. It's a sense of direction. It's a sense of positivity. It's a sense of self-worth. It's a sense of acknowledgement and understanding. But also, too, it makes you feel like you matter. You have a purpose. And you got something to do. And I don't mean just, oh, I'm going to go, blah, blah, blah. No, I meant your mind, you've got something else to think about that isn't where you're going to get your next fix. Instead, you're thinking, what am I going to do my next podcast on? Or, can I have somebody, who can I have to come and sit on here and talk to me? Or doing the research, I got to go look this up. Or, or whatever the case may be. It's giving you a sense of positiveness in yourself. Encouragement, self-worth, believing in you, forgiving yourself. But also, too, it's also healing you because you are facing your life. At least I am. I've talked about my podcast. I'm very candid in things, and I talk about things. It's good therapy for me, but it's also me reliving and triggering me. But it's also me putting my feelings somewhere. And when you don't have somewhere to put your feelings, especially in a positive direction, that could be deadly. Literally deadly. In one shape or another. And nobody deserves to feel like that. Nobody. It says evaluate your time management skills. It can be difficult to determine if we are managing time efficiently. At the end of the work week, do you ever look back and wonder how the days got away from you so fast? Taking care of my mom, I hardly ever know what day it is, and I hardly ever know the date. And so I've tried to get into the habit now of reminding myself today is, I like to sweat blank. Today is Wednesday. um, November 19th, 2024, and I'm cheating right now because I'm looking at the bottom of my laptop. 11/19/2024, and where I'm at right now, it's 9:38 p.m. I don't go into the depth of the time, but I do try to remind myself the day and the date as much as I can, because all my days run together. They really do. It says keeping a time log can help you determine where your time went. At the beginning of each hour, write down what you accomplished during the last hour. Note distractions. An example of time log as before. So basically what they did is they took an itinerary of a day calendar per se, and then just broke it down per hour. And it put things accomplished, it put the day and then the time underneath it in rows like an Excel sheet. Things accomplished and distractions, and you just fill those blanks in. When I was working in this different lines of work I was in, I had a notebook, usually a legal pad, and I literally notated everybody I talked to, what time it was, what day it was, what the conversation was about. I itemized my workday. I noted it. So that way, if I needed to reference something, it was there, but also, too, it itemized my time management, not only for me, but if there was any questions on my time management or my workability, or if I'm slacking, if I'm not doing something, or I've got blamed for something, or said I didn't do something and I know I did, and I've got it all written down, basically covering my ass, I had it. And I got it started doing that from my boss that I used to work for a home builder. And that's what she did. She had a legal pad, and that's what she did. And I was like, that's really a good idea. And I started doing it. And I had it sitting there right beside me, right by the phone, on my desk. And so if I was doing something, I was working on a project, or if I was doing something in the lab, or if I was talking on the phone to somebody, or calling vendors, or calling sales reps, or if I was calling other companies, whatever the case may be, it was written down on my legal pad, and I kept notes of it. So it helped a lot. It really did, and it made me feel more structured. So that might be something you think about too. That might help you. It might help with some work stress relief as well, because it makes you feel organized in a chaotic work environment. So that might help you. It says, at the end of the day, review your log. How could you have avoided the distractions? Did you give yourself enough time to accomplish high priority task? Did you make enough time for fun activities? Did you have too much free time? And think about your answers to the questions above to determine how you can use your time more efficiently. Now, some people know how to balance life because they found what works for them. And some people balance life because they realize that they don't need to balance life, they need to live life. And that gives them balance. But then there's some people that can't do all the above. And there's no right or wrong, because either way you do it can be overwhelming. Because if you have it all written down and organized, and then say you make a list and you miss something on the list, or you organize it, and maybe you might have forgot something, maybe you didn't elaborate because you got busy doing something else, so you got distracted, maybe you got a call or a meeting you had to go to, so you didn't get a chance to finish writing something out. So there's a gap, if you will, in your notes, or it's not as detailed as what you normally like to do it. That can eat you up, because then you could feel like I'm slacking because I didn't even take the time to fill this out. Why wouldn't I wrote that down? Why didn't I put that on the paper? Why didn't I do this? What happened? What caused me to be to that point where I couldn't elaborate more? So what I have found to do on that situation is, if I could not note something because of distraction of the exact incident or whatnot, when I came back from whatever it was, I noted of what happened and what I recalled from the task that I needed. So it wasn't in order. That's another thing. In order of date and time. And if you're like me, that's a big deal. So coming to terms with adding that on there, but also coping, and I know it sounds silly to some, coping with the fact that it is not in order affects people as well. Because me, if I'm if I'm writing something and I mess up, I say this most of the time, if I mess up or I forgot a letter in a word or scratch something out or whatever, I throw the whole thing away and start over. And I've done this a lot because it has to be right. When I'm writing it out in a I want to say professional manner, my professionalism, because I've always been in the professional world, in my professional way of writing, and not just my chicken scratch, if you will. Because sometimes when I get to thinking about stuff, I write poetry and stuff, and when I just get a thought in my mind, my handwriting is worse than a doctor's. Sometimes I can't even read my own handwriting. But when I redo that and put it in actually legible form, then it has to be right. And it got to the point where I was starting over on this one the other day so many times. Finally, I just got out my laptop. I said, I can't keep wasting this paper and starting over. So, and I could be all the way to the end. And then if I'm in a different frame of mind or mood, I'm just like, you know what, hell with it. I'll deal with it later. I'll rewrite it later. And I've done that. So it's a thing. But everybody handles life differently. And everybody has different traumas, different incidences, different triggers, different coping mechanisms, different things that stress them out, and different ways of self-medicating. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. And when I say it makes you human, you're a real person with a heartbeat, air in your lungs. You are a human being. You are a live person. You're not a machine. You're not an electronic device. You are a person. And just as quick as your heart started beating, is just as quick as it can stop. If you are going through something, please don't think yourself as a failure. Please don't think yourself as worthless or mentally unfit or not worth it or better off. And I know I say this, but I say this with my whole being. Don't give up on yourself. Take that moment, that one moment, and do everything you can with all your might of that next breath to intervene your moment with something good. And you might think that's just not happening, that's impossible. And yeah, it is. You're right. You are exactly right. It is. It's very impossible. But it is doable. And there are people in this world that are equipped, trained, sympathetic, empathetic, caring, loving, understanding, non-manipulative, that you can entrust with your soul and your well-being. God has got you. And they always say, put it in God's hands. And I believe that. But then I remember, God gave me two hands for a reason too. Because sometimes you got to fall completely apart to know where you need to be put back together. And then when you're putting yourself together, that's where you can regrow and decide what pieces you want to not carry on your shoulders anymore that are too heavy. Just don't forget the most important parts of you. And only you will understand that. I pray. Because I can tell you whatever. Telling it and hearing it is one thing. Believing it is one thing. But honestly feeling it is a whole different emotion. You've reinforced how much you hate yourself. Take that and revert it. And reinforce how much you love yourself. And you might say, oh, I don't love myself. You know what? I agree and I understand that because I'm there. I told my counselor I'm growing. I was in preschool, then I went to kindergarten, and I was in first grade. And I told him the other day, I said, I think I'm in second grade now. I'm in second grade. And I'm proud of myself. But it's a long, long journey that is never going to stop. Because you're always going to be worthy of being worthy to compliment yourself. Believe in yourself. Appreciate yourself. Respect yourself. Understand yourself. Cut yourself some slack. We are our biggest critics. Forgive yourself. Goof off. Shoot. Goof off and have fun. And I say this because I put on my own skit shows. I do my little voice impressions and act out, whatever, and I'll talk to myself and I'll goof off with myself. My mom, I went in there the other day and she said, oh, are we doing the southern accent today? Actually, I think that was today. I said, I don't have my teeth in, because I had my teeth in. And she was like, oh, so you're doing the southern thing today. I said, well, evidently I got my twang's out. And then the other day I was done, she goes, oh, are we doing the British accent today? So it's just who I am. And I have discovered that this is my belief. Because I have to come to terms with dissecting myself and understanding the different parts of me. Because in order to heal, I got to understand what I'm healing. Because some scars and some traumas are so deep inside me that they're way before I can even have recollection of even knowing that they even went by. Because somebody might say, oh, you're stupid, and you just blow it off. Yeah, I guess I am. But if you're told you're stupid so many times, eventually you're like, oh man, I'm stupid. So then you're going to believe you're stupid. No. You might do some really stupid things, but you're not a stupid person. You're not a stupid person. And remembering to remind yourself that is vital. and doing positive affirmations or encouragement. Stand in front of that mirror. I am smart. I am worthy. I am understanding. I'm kind. I'm funny. Sometimes I'm funny looking. Whatever it is that you go through, I'm loved. I'm wanted. I'm me. Don't be ashamed to be you. Don't be ashamed to be you. And the thing of it is I don't think anybody in this world really knows who they are. Because everybody in this world has been told so many times of what they're not. And what they can't do, what they shouldn't do, what other people think is a waste of time, or whatever the case may be. Prove them wrong. You're going to piss them off either way. You might as well come out a winner. And I don't mean that meanly. They're going to talk shit about you. Give them something to talk about. But you hold your head up. You hold your head up. You take life by the bull horns, and you ride it like the bitch it is. And if you fall off, you pick yourself back up. Dust your bottom off and saddle up. Because it's going to be one hell of a ride. But you're going to do it. You're going to do it. Even if that bull is sitting still and it's not mechanically moving, doesn't mean you're not. And if you are suffering, please reach out to somebody. Find the courage. Even if it's just somebody that you don't even know. Find your support group, maybe. 988 is the suicide prevention hotline. I say it in every podcast. They are trained, equipped people. They can send you in resources. If you don't feel safe with yourself, you can call 911. You can call the police department. You can call the fire station. You can call the hospital. You can call whoever you are comfortable with calling. And if somebody doesn't answer, or if somebody brushes you off, or makes you feel like you're a piece of shit, please don't stop trying. Because that's just somebody who either doesn't understand, somebody who's just not available. Maybe they were in the bathroom taking a poop and they didn't get to your phone in time. Okay? You never know. Just saying. We're going to take it to that seriousness, okay? But don't give up. If you're going to fall to your knees, give it to God. Let Him help you talk yourself through it. Because even though you put it in His hands, He gave you two hands also. Find what works for you. But if you can't, and you're confused and you're lost, hell, even reach out to me. Honestly. But please don't give up on yourself. And I say that with my whole heart. And for every core of my well-being and my soul. Please don't give up. Because it is that. You're worth that much. You are. You are worth that next breath. And maybe that sounds like, who cares? Who are you? I'm someone in your ear right now. You chose this moment in time to listen to me for a reason. There's a reason why you're on the other end of whatever device you're listening to. There's a reason. And my reason being in your ear is because I care. I care. So if anybody in this world makes you feel like they don't care about you and you're not worth the next breath and you're worthless and you're this and you're that and all the negative things that you're feeling inside of your hollowness, I care. I care. And on that, I'm going to close out. And I appreciate everybody who's taken the time out of their life to listen to me tonight. And I always say your time is the one thing in your life that is the most precious and valuable and non-replaceable. And you have taken the time out to share it with me. And I you. And I wholeheartedly, with my being, appreciate that. More than I can ever express. And if you haven't checked my other podcast out, please feel free to do so. I have a Podbean channel and a YouTube channel. Let me clear my throat. And it's me. And there's a lot of candidness, but there's a lot of reality checks in there for me. And it can make or break me sometimes. And I've gotten to the point where I listen to my own podcast. I told my counselor I need to be in my audience too. So I go through and I listen to my podcast. And sometimes I've listened to a couple of them a few times. Because I need the reinforcement. I need it in my ear. Because sometimes when you don't get it anywhere else, you gotta get it somewhere. Because sometimes you just need to hear it. It's believing and feeling it that are the hurdles. And I pray very hardly for all of you that are going through anything, and all of you that are a part of life, literally and figuratively a part of life. And on that, I am going to close out because I'm going to keep on rambling and going on. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you've listened to my podcast, you know that I do have the gift of gab sometimes, and I'll just go on and on and on. But it's because I'm passionate about things, and I'm passionate about you. I'm passionate about me, and I pray for you and me. So on that, I'm going to close out, and I hope you all have a safe and blessed evening. And 98 Suicide Prevention Hotline, and God doesn't have a hotline. He is the line. So anyway, have a great night.